Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. This is the weekend edition where we interview notable people from the world of real estate investing. Today is no exception. We have an amazing guest. He's none other than John Lee Dumas. John is the founder and host of the award-winning podcast, Entrepreneurs on Fire. He's had such notable guests as Tony Robbins, Barbara Corcoran, Seth Godin, Gary Vaynerchuk, and thousands of others, including yours truly. With more than 1 million monthly listens and more than 100 million total listens, his 3,000 plus episodes has made him an icon on a global scale. John launched the Entrepreneurs on Fire podcast back in 2012 when podcasts were just a fledgling industry. And he's grown the podcast alone into a multi-million-dollar income stream. All the way from Palmas del Mar, Puerto Rico, welcome to the show, John Lee Dumas.
Victor, I am fired up to be here. The birds are singing, the sun is shining in Puerto Rico.
That's awesome. Well, John, I've got to know you over the last couple of years and, of course, been watching your journey. It's been breathtaking to watch. You're almost a decade into this journey of Entrepreneurs on Fire. It's extraordinary. You're really almost a modern-day Napoleon Hill.
I'm glad you said that because the book that I wrote, I actually called The Modern Day Think and Grow Rich. So, yes.
Well, you really are, because what you've done is you've surrounded yourself with people, and I know you've done it to add value to the listeners, but maybe it was intentional, maybe it was just a side effect. You actually got to interact with all these entrepreneurs by the thousands and pick and choose from that all-you-can-eat buffet of knowledge to incorporate in your own life.
It was a lucky side effect. I mean, I didn't realize that being able to talk for 20 minutes to a successful entrepreneur would be enough to forge a relationship. I just didn't know. And it was awesome to see how that was actually the fact. And doing a daily podcast, that's exactly what I was able to do on such a hyper level, was interact and engage with the world's most successful, inspiring entrepreneurs, literally 7 days a week, grow my network so quickly as a result. And here we are today.
I love it. Now, you've just written a book, The Uncommon Path to Common... Actually, I said that backwards. It's The Common Path to Uncommon Success. Why do you say the common path?
Because it is a common path, Victor. It's a very common path to get to your version of uncommon success. And that's really the key, is that it's not a hidden path. It's not a secret path. It's a common path. And I know that because I've interviewed 3,000 of the world's most successful entrepreneurs, and I've been able to identify the 17 core foundational principles that they all share. And that's what I put in the book. It's a 17-chapter, 17-step roadmap to financial freedom and fulfillment. And it's a common path, brother. None of us are rocket scientists. None of us are, curing world's cancer. We're just solving real problems on our micro levels, and we're winning at the levels that we want to be winning at, which is financial freedom, fulfillment, uncommon success.
I think the part that's common is that there will be people out there, perhaps myself included, that are implementing 2, 3, 5, maybe 10 of those 17 principles, but it's not enough. It's necessary, but not sufficient. So when there's gaps, it's like Swiss cheese and it doesn't hold together.
It's a great analogy. And that's what I tell every single person is when you get the book, sure, open the table of contents, identify what step you're on. Let's say you think you're on step 11. Cool. Now go to step 1, chapter 1, and start the book. Because 3 things are going to happen, Victor, at every single step. Number 1, you're going to be like, oh, wow, I actually did crush this step. That's validation. Okay, cool, move on. Or 2, which is much more likely, you're going to say, oh, wow, there's some really good points that I'm seeing here that I could use to pivot, adjust, and tweak the step right here to make it even better. Or 3, you're going to say, time to wipe that slate clean. I have been doing this all wrong. And it's going to be one of the 3 things for steps 1 to 10. And then when you get to 10, you'll be caught up to where you're currently at right now, step 11. Yet now, instead of having a Swiss cheese first 10 steps, I like that analogy, I'm going to use it. Now you have a rock solid foundation to proceed forward and get to your version of uncommon success.
When I thought about this book and I looked at some of the guests that you brought in to contribute to it, folks that you've interviewed on the show. Out of the thousands, you distilled it down to a little more than a baker's dozen of folks that you wanted to bring in. But you did more than just curate other people's content. You can do a recipe, throw all the ingredients in a pot, and 15 minutes later you have dinner. But it's a very different thing to do that than do a reduction where you boil it for hours and hours and you get this intensity and complexity that you don't get just curating things. What are your thoughts? You really distill this down.
I distilled this down into what I would have wanted and what I needed, Victor, back in 2012. And again, I like the fact that you bring up, Napoleon Hill, because he went around and interviewed about 30 of the world's most successful entrepreneurs to create this timeless book, Think and Grow Rich. I went around and interviewed 3,000 of the world's current most successful entrepreneurs, and I created a 17-step roadmap to financial freedom and fulfillment. So it's not just like mixing a bunch of things into a pot, stirring and seeing what comes up. It's like, here's a roadmap. Start at step 1. And by the time you get to step 17, you will have completed this quest. You will have completed this roadmap. You will be at your version of financial freedom and fulfillment.
One of the things that I often hear is that, people say, well, I've got the knowledge and, I've taken a course, I'm all set. And then, but maybe they don't have the emotional fortitude to overcome the difficult moments. And I know you've had things that worked and things that you tried that didn't work. And so it's getting through those tough times. But then the third and probably the most important is immersing yourself in the right environment. And I think that's the one that's most often overlooked. And you touch on that a little bit when you talk about creating or forming a mastermind. You're very specific about how you do that. But I think there's more to it than just the mastermind. How have you created your own environment for success? Because I think it's not just hanging out on the beach in Puerto Rico.
Well, I really do think it's important that you brought up step 6, chapter 6, which is creating or joining a mastermind. Because a lot of people, especially when they read a book like Think and Grow Rich, by the way, which, just talks ad nauseum in a great way about masterminds and how powerful they are, everybody does them wrong. Every single person is running their mastermind incorrectly. Now, it doesn't mean they're not getting value from it, but it could just be so much better. And that's why I've just laid out the step-by-step format on how to either create or join the right mastermind and actually get the most out of a mastermind you can. And listen, I'm real specific. I give you a minimum and a maximum number of people that can be in that mastermind. I tell you what has to be happening during your 1-hour mastermind every single week. I'm laying it all out for you. Like, that's what this book is, Victor. It is leaving no room for error, because I've been on a common path to uncommon success for a decade. I've interviewed 3,000 successful entrepreneurs who have been on this journey for sometimes multiple decades. I've interviewed some entrepreneurs that have been doing it for 5, 6, 7 decades, and I've learned from every single one of them. So this book, and this is just an important concept, it's not my genius. It's not my story. It's not my journey. It's the lessons that I've learned from speaking to over 3,000 of the world's most successful entrepreneurs over the past decade, of interviewing thousands and thousands of people and having thousands of hours of conversations, learning, implementing in my own business, having struggles, failures, having to come back, tweak, pivot, adjust, and having a lot of successes and wins, and continuously evolving into where we're at today, which is truly my version of uncommon success.
Out of the 17 steps, there were probably some that came naturally, that were just like play, part of your intrinsic genius. And then there were other things that probably were a really heavy lift, that were really going against some of your intrinsic makeup. Do you have an example of each?
So I'd say the ones that really just went with my genius, like my zone of fire, would, if I was just to pick out one, would be step 7, chapter 7, which is design your content production plan. Like, that allowed me to create the beast that Entrepreneurs on Fire is, because I was able to develop a fantastic content production plan that other people just didn't think was possible. Like, they didn't think a daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs was possible without potentially a team, making everything happen. It was just me. And, I eventually did build a very small team. I mean, now it's myself and Kate and 3 virtual assistants. I mean, we're still a tiny, tiny, small team. But day one, it was just me coming up with everything that needed to happen to have a daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. So designing a content production plan that was something that really did come easily to me. Something that has been pretty interesting is diversifying revenue streams. Now, I've done good within my business, within Entrepreneurs on Fire, of having multiple revenue streams. But I brought Stu McLaren in because he was able to fill a gap on something that I've not done so well in, which is diversifying your revenue streams outside of your business, like in real estate, luxury homes, cryptocurrency, gold, investments, like all these different things. And, that's an also key way to diversify your income stream as well. So I learned a lot from his contribution to that chapter.
I love that. So as you look forward over the next couple of years, where do you see taking Entrepreneurs on Fire? I know that you went through a period where you wanted to create a little bit of life balance. You stepped back in terms of the frequency. I think you're back to daily now, and which by the way, I love. I love the fact that it's daily. And as you know, I'm producing a daily show here now on 3 years. So it's a bit of a hamster wheel, but there's something about that rhythm that works for me, and I think it works for the listeners as well.
I agree. I mean, just a listener knowing that they were going to be able to wake up every single day and having an episode waiting for them. I did it 2,000 days in a row. So I did it for 5.5 years. So you only have 2.5 years to catch up to me on that side. You're over halfway there. But, like you said, at episode 2,000, I was like, you know what? It's been 2,000 days, 2,000 episodes. Let's step back and do a couple a week. And, soon a couple a week, turned into 3 a week, and 3 a week turned into 4 a week. And now, we're kind of back to basically a daily show. Just because, there's so many people that I want to talk to, that I can talk to. And that's, I've now kind of gotten the rhythm where my systems and my content production plan is so dialed in that I don't want to say it's easy for me to do a daily show, but I mean, it's a lot easier than it used to be.
Yeah, I so resonate with that. And, I want to thank you personally. And I think you and I have talked about this before. You're the reason my show is daily. You are the proof point. You are my Roger Bannister to the 4-minute mile.
So you're great with analogies, Victor.
Well, it's absolutely true. You demonstrated that it could be done, right. And you had a process, and I can't.
And there was an audience for it too, which is key.
Right. Now, your show is much broader than mine because you're addressing entrepreneurs much more broadly. Our audience is really real estate investors, not the rookie investors, but those that are really established in the business, maybe own hundreds of units already. That's our focus. And we have a very strong and loyal listener base. So we're probably not going to get to 100 million downloads the way you have, but we still have a very strong, loyal listener base. But it showed that it was possible. Now, if you thought back 10 years ago when you started this, if you had set the goal of, gosh, I want to get to 100 million downloads, I'm guessing you would have probably failed.
I mean, ignorance is bliss when you start off as an entrepreneur. You just don't know what you don't know. And like, if you had told me, hey, John, you're going to get 10,000 listens every single month, like I would have been like, sign me up for that all day, every day. I mean, that seems like a massive number, which it is. Now I get 45,000 listens a day, sometimes more. So it's, one of those things where perception is reality. And it's just kind of, as the show has grown, I've just had to acclimate to my new reality. And it's been a fun journey. But yeah, if you had said that number, I would have said that doesn't even make sense. Like, it doesn't, 100 million listens doesn't make sense.
Exactly. When we connected at Podcast Movement, one of the things that I observed about you is you were intensely focused. In the minutes leading up to you going on stage, it's like you had a do not disturb sign on your forehead as you were preparing for your talk, and you were very focused. And when you got on stage, you absolutely nailed it. And that's a sign of a true professional, as opposed to someone who's just out there winging it. So just wanted to show you that I noticed that, and you've got my respect for that. Any closing thoughts, any closing words for our listeners?
Well, one thing I'll say is you are very perceptive, because that is exactly how I feel before a talk. I do not want anybody in my zone, because I know exactly what I want to say, and I know exactly the energy that I want to bring, and I don't want to be distracted in any way, shape, or form, in the minutes leading up to a big talk. So very perceptive on your part. And yeah, definitely we'll have to agree that was 100% the case. And, the last thing I'll say is this, like, listen, if you think that 10 years worth of interviewing 3,000 of the world's most successful entrepreneurs being distilled down into a 17-step roadmap to financial freedom and fulfillment, 71,000 words, these 273 pages to get to your version of uncommon success. If that sounds interesting to you, check out uncommonsuccessbook.com.
And I'm assuming you can buy it on pretty much anywhere you buy hard copy books. It's also available on
Anywhere.
Kindle and audiobook as well.
It'll be there. I did the audiobook right in this room.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, definitely, John, I'm looking forward. Thank you for the manuscript. I've read through part of it. I didn't get through all of it in the few days that we had between you and I interacting and setting up this interview. But what I've read so far, I love. I love the fact that you read every single word, wasn't ghostwritten. Definitely, for the listeners at home, reach out, get a copy of The Common Path to Uncommon Success. And the website again was uncommonsuccessbook.com.
Nailed it.
Thank you so much. And for the listeners at home, have an awesome rest of your weekend. Go make some great things happen. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.